I think you're right. And interesting enough, I mean, I belong very much to the sort of Fukuyama school, end of history. And, I believed also that, after the end of the Cold War, all of us would revert to liberal democracy, market economy, and globalization. And with that, also China. There was this feeling. But of course, China is a different kettle of fish. It's very much centralized around the Chinese Communist Party, and it's 88 plus million members. And in that sense, you don't see much change happening on that front.
China has a long history, but most of that history is of China as an empire where legitimacy of the emperor is based on the male line, the ruling house. That's what conferred legitimacy on an emperor. And when he loses the medal of heaven, then there's a period of turmoil, and a new dynasty, a new family comes into position. China has a very short experience as a republic. It's only in 1911. And that revolution from imperial China to republican China created, probably, in my view, the greatest revolution in human history. And the liberation of women in that revolution is almost unbelievable, because everybody had harems, not just the emperor. Men had harems, wealthy men, and it was accepted. And women who were in high society had their feet bound for the sexual pleasure of men. So for all that to change within a short period was remarkable. And among Asian women, if you compare Chinese women to Japanese, to Korean, to Indian, to Malay women, Chinese women are the most liberated. That was because of the 1911 revolution. But how to organize politically, how to confer legitimacy on government, this is still an ongoing experiment in China.
And how do you then believe, I mean, if this is getting more about China than I expected, but it's always good with a free-flowing conversation. So you take, 1979 and the opening of China. Do you see this continue? Because, of course, China has gone from rags to riches. I mean, you talk a lot about it yourself as well. We've seen it become one of the biggest economies in the world. I think in the speech you even talked about it being about half of the world's economy by 2050, et cetera, et cetera. Will opening of China continue economically?
Yes, because the Chinese people want to do better. They are right now, per capita, maybe 20% of US per capita. Surely they can reach half of US per capita, by which time the Chinese economy will be equal to that of the US and the EU combined, because of the logic of numbers. And that desire for a better life, it's unstoppable, regardless of how it's governed. But when China is well governed, then the infrastructure is in place, the progress will be very, very rapid. But if China is misgoverned, if corruption infects the system, then a cancer develops. And Xi Jinping, for all the criticisms of him, did one thing very great, which was to reverse the tendency towards greater and greater corruption in China, which has always been the bane of Chinese dynasties.
And he was quite tough on that, I think, straight from the beginning. I also remember actually meeting him a couple of times when I was foreign minister. He was vice president, and I'm sure you did as well. But he, to me, seemed like a sponge. He wanted information. And every time you talked to him, was always very much, corruption is the worst thing to society. And he pushed that.
For which he made many enemies. Many people would want him dead. So I've always felt that he's a man who's prepared to die in order to stamp out corruption in China.
Let's go to Europe and China then. You began by saying that you have a feeling that Europe could play a big role. So let's put you now first you were in the shoes of the US president. Now I put you in the shoes of the Commission president or a European leader. What should Europe do here?
Europe is a great experiment in bringing troubled nations together in a confederation. I was at the archives recently, and it was interesting seeing how the foundations of Europe were carefully put into place over many decades And these foundations lay the basis of a human experiment that despite differences of history, even of values, you can all come together, create meta-values, deal with each other as brothers and sisters. This is the European experiment, and if it succeeds, it sets an example for the world. I feel very proud in being a part of the School of Transnational Governance. This is a school to delve into, to improve the European experiment. And you invite foreigners to join you, to understand what Europe is trying to do. If Europe succeeds, it's a lesson for the entire world. You need the Western alliance with the Americans for a collective defense. But Europe has its own destiny from America, which is far away, which is surrounded by 2 oceans. I mean, Europe is complicated. At one end of Eurasia, it's always had its internal tensions. It is not an enemy of China. It's too far away. And China can never be an enemy of Europe. So what role does Europe play in the coming decades? In this titanic struggle between China and the US, if Europe maintains the balance, there'll be no war. The Americans cannot go into war with China with Europe not supporting it. It's a good point. China cannot go into war with America with Europe not supporting it.
Mm.
But this requires a strategic view of Europe, not only geopolitically, but also historically. China may have been a very good civilization, but Europe in all its diversity is probably contributed more to human civilization than any other continent because of its diversity, its ceaseless internal struggle.
偷偷告诉大家，我最近发现了新法宝 Royal Face 逆时奇迹系列，它有活肤露、全效精华，还有精华霜。尤其我皮肤比较偏干，所以我非常的注重保湿。保湿做得好，肌肤自然烹润。提亮肤色更年轻，抚平皱纹超有感，而且气色变好。用心保养，每天都更美一点。美吧！